This is Green Seas, the podcast by Tradewinds about sustainability and the business of the ocean. I'm Eric Priante Martin, and today we're looking at one company that's going big on bio-LNG to move cars around Europe. United European Car Carriers, known as UECC, first struck a deal in July with fuel provider Titan to fill the tanks of its fleet of natural gas-fueled vessels with liquefied biomethane. The fuel, also known as bio-LNG, is produced from biological waste to make a lower carbon alternative to liquefied natural gas, or LNG. Then, as Tradewinds recently reported, the company went for more, securing enough bio-LNG from Titan to cover the vast majority of the fuel needs for those ships. Major car makers Toyota and Ford have already signed on to Sail for Change, the service to use the vessels powered by liquefied biomethane. And UECC, a Norwegian company whose vessels carry vehicles around Europe, isn't stopping there. This is Daniel Gent, the company's energy and sustainability manager.
So I think we're going to expand. We're going to expand our bio-LNG or liquefied biomethane use around Europe. We will be shortly announcing another contract with another supplier of LBM, which is really interesting.
Gent looked back 8 years when UECC started operating LNG-fueled vessels. It had a clear strategy: grow the small-scale market for LNG, a fossil fuel whose main ingredient is methane.
It was no good delivering LNG vessels and having no infrastructure to supply us. The same thing is absolutely true of LBM as well. So we're looking across the market and we're saying to suppliers, put things on our desk, put opportunities in front of us. If you see the possibility to have some biomethane which is produced in Portugal or in Denmark or in Poland or wherever it might be, if you find some opportunity, put it across our desk and we'll consider it, adding it to our portfolio. So what I think you will see from us beyond 25 is further increasing use of bio-LNG beyond what we're doing next year, and a kind of a widening of the supply network. You'll find us using other ports, you'll find us using other suppliers. You'll also find us securing different feedstocks as well. We want to kind of have that I think in this particular market, there'll be a real strength in diversifying the feedstocks, diversifying the suppliers and the supply locations, because you need to build an overall kind of holistic network for your fleet. So that's what you can see from 26 onwards.
By 2030, the company is aiming to have liquefied biomethane make up 20% of its fuel use, with 17% made up of biofuels that replace conventional bunkers and 20% fossil LNG, meaning alternative fuels will make up the majority of its energy use. By 2040, the company wants to have net zero greenhouse gas emissions while fully phasing out fossil oils. But why is UECC blazing this course in bio-LNG for vehicle carriers? Gent told me that liquefied biomethane has been seen as a promising fuel for shipping's future, but it had looked like it was a decade away before it could be put to use at scale, rather than just in one-off spot deals. That's changing.
Actually, what we're seeing is that the opportunities are coming much, much faster than probably had been anticipated. The reason this is so remarkable to me is that it's a long-term commitment that's happening already now. We have been running our vessels with liquefied biomethane since July of this year, and we're going to continue to do that through the entirety of next year and beyond. So I think where this is remarkable is that it's the length of it. This is not a one delivery of 1,000 tons. This is a long-term sustained supply plan for a number of vessels that's going to deliver a huge emission reduction to our customers.
And UECC was an early adopter of LNG, bringing the first car carriers in the world to run on the fuel, and then following with hybrid vessels that can run on LNG and conventional fuel in combination with batteries.
It was logical that we would develop that LNG into the next level, because, to be honest with you, what we've seen is that biofuel has had a huge uptake and will continue to for the rest of this decade, I'm sure. We ourselves were big consumers of biofuel, and we introduced it in a continuous way. For more than 4 years ago, nearly 5 years ago, we introduced biofuel to our fleet. So we're very early adopters on that. But there's an obvious question around LNG, which is, yes, it delivers an emission reduction to the conventional fuels, but LNG in itself is a fossil fuel. So what's next for that? So what's your answer for that? And what you don't want to do is you don't want to end up with a situation where LNG is seen as one of the least favorable fuels that's in use because biofuels are kind of getting the limelight. So It was clear to us that we had to demonstrate the pathway for LNG. How does the LNG pathway really become sustainable? And bio-LNG is clearly the first step on that pathway.
Bio-LNG has critics. Environmental groups that are opposed to LNG as a solution to decarbonize shipping say that the methane slip that you see on ships and in the supply chain is also a problem for liquefied biomethane. Methane, when it leaks out of engines or the upstream supply chain, is a more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. But Gent said UECC is tackling methane slip with a recent deal with Daphne Technologies to monitor methane emissions from the engines in its fleet.
We'll be able to observe where the methane slip occurs, how much of it actually occurs, and does it occur during certain operational times. So whether when your engine's at high load or low load, when you're maneuvering in port, when you're at sea, where exactly is the methane slip as it happens. One thing we really need to move away from as an industry is relying on kind of factor-based emission factors. So where we say methane slip for this engine is 1.7%, for this one is 0.2. What we know, because we're investing in vessels, we just ordered some more multi-fuel, but primarily LNG dual fuel vessels. What we know from engine trials is that the methane slip is much lower on the low pressure engines than it is stated in the regulations. And we know also that the technology that's now been added to these engines is allowing the methane slip to reduce significantly to less than half of what's actually stated in the regulations. So the answer that's twofold, I would say. One, it clearly is a concern what actually happens with how much methane slip is occurring. But in the first place, you need to measure it, and you can't manage what you can't measure. So we're trying to take active steps to really measure what's happening, and then we can make operational decisions around that. But also, the technology is advancing very, very quickly, and the methane slip, which was no doubt a bigger issue in the past, is diminishing.
At first, UECC bought liquefied biomethane for its own account, without customer support. But then, Gent told me, it felt emboldened by the customer's response. Car manufacturers got on board, showing a willingness to pay extra for lower emissions transportation of their vehicles. They were eager to reduce their indirect supply chain emissions known as Scope 3, for example, by paying an extra cost per car to ship in a carbon-neutral way. The demand doesn't yet cover all the bio-LNG that UECC has procured from Titan, but it's growing.
So every time we introduce alternative fuels, we're generating this commodity of a CO2 ton. We basically have sold out, almost sold out everything that was generated in 24 towards our customers, which is great. We will shortly announce a fourth customer that's on board with Sail for Change. We've already publicly announced the other major OEMs that have supported this. And what we're seeing is those customers that are on board with it want to expand their exposure to it, or they want to expand the scope of their kind of involvement in this. And then, of course, other OEMs are also interested, other car manufacturers are interested in actually getting on board with it. So when we look to next year, what we're going to deliver next year exceeds the current customer demand. But our expectation is that demand's increasing. I mean, we are seeing that's happening kind of exponentially. And even if it's not coming from within the car sector, there is clearly cargo owners in the maritime sector in general that are really interested in investing in this.
Gent says customers are motivated by a few things. One is the growing regulatory penalties for not using clean fuels. But the car manufacturers also have their own net zero targets that they want to meet, and their customers want greener supply chains. For more on sustainability and shipping, visit trademansnews.com/sustainability. And to sign up for the Green Seas newsletter, visit tinyurl.com/greenseas. Music for this episode is by Alex Grohl, Mikolas Sosin, and Den from Pixabay.